Okay, so welcome, Ian. Ian is the bearded beekeeper in Port Blandford, Newfoundland. And I want to share a short bio on him today. First of all, thank you, Ian, for being with us today. And Ian lives with his partner and his 3-year-old daughter. Port Blandford is about 2 hours outside St. John's, and Ian has been a beekeeper for a little over 7 years, which is kind of crazy because it seems like beekeeping is becoming now more and more a popular thing. So, welcome, Ian. And Ian, for everybody
Hi.
to get to know you a little better, I have some questions for you today. Um,
Yep.
so, what initially drew you to beekeeping, and how did you get started with your own hives?
So it pretty much just happened out of nowhere. Partner and I were walking around the house and outside the garden, and we were noticing that pollination it just wasn't there. So our fruit trees weren't getting any fruit, and our fruit bushes weren't getting any fruit. And so I looked at my partner and I said, "You know what? We should get bees." And she said, "Yeah, sure." And I was like, "Oh, I did not expect that." And then so I dove down the rabbit hole of getting bees.
Interesting. Interesting. And what year was that?
That was in 2016, I believe. And
Wow.
and
Wow.
then so I got on the internet and I found that there was an actual beekeeping association here in the province that
Mhm.
had just started up the year prior, and they were actually having their annual general meeting in a month's time. So I signed us up for it, and we went to the annual general meeting, not knowing anything about beekeeping or anyone
Right.
in the beekeeping community or anything like that. So I figured that would be a good place to start to even figure out, how to go about getting bees. Because, like I said, I knew nothing.
That's wild. That's wild. So from there, it all began.
Yeah, so at the meeting we met. There was only two honeybee producers in the province at the time, so we met
Mhm.
both of those individuals, and we got our name put on the waiting list for bees. And at the time, the waiting list was a 2-year waiting list, so we got our name on the list right away. And then that was, it was kind of a bummer that we had to wait, but it was
Mm.
also a blessing in disguise because it also gave me 2 years to figure out
Mhm.
what the actual honeybees were, right, and what they did
Right.
and everything
Right.
about them. So, yeah.
Cool. Cool. So, like for people who know nothing about bees, can you share some of the importance of bees in our ecosystem and the role they play, like in biodiversity? So I know they're super
Y-
important, and you hear a lot in the news that, we need to keep our bees. So can you share some insights that you might have?
yeah, absolutely. So not only the honeybee, as the honeybee isn't native, but the bumblebees and the mason bees and leafcutter bees and all those, they play, well, the most important role in pollination. They say every third bite of food is contributed to bees and pollination, and other pollinators as well. But bees are the majority of them, because we also have butterflies and other insects as well.
Mhm.
But and the reason for me and my operation, um, I don't keep all of my, I guess you would say, all my hives in the one yard. There's not
Mhm.
like 70 hives in the one space, so I spread them out in a 200-kilometer radius, so that the floral area in the one certain area isn't strained. Um, because we have to remember that honeybees are commercial livestock, and they can be created from, people know how to make more and more bees at all times. But
Mhm.
I don't want them out competing the native pollinators, such as the honey or the bumblebees and then the bumble and the butterflies and stuff. So that's why I
Mhm.
spread it out to a 200-kilometer radius. And that way I get different flavors from different areas on my honey and stuff like that. So yeah, it works for the ecosystem and myself.
I didn't know that. That's wild, wild. So anywhere in the Bonavista area, or you have any
Yeah,
down that area? Oh, okay,
not
nice.
down in Bonavista, but on the peninsula down throughout.
Okay, okay. I've got a nice piece of land if you wanna put some down there. I got a root cellar too, so
Oh, we should talk.
we Awesome. I did not know that. That's so interesting. Okay. And I'm doing this because I wanna learn. Like,
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
honey. So this is, like, why I think so many people are interested in knowing how it all works in terms of honey production. So
Absolutely.
in Newfoundland, what are some of the unique challenges and opportunities of beekeeping in Newfoundland? Like, for the climate, like, I know that the climate can be pretty rough, so talk to us about
Yeah.
unique challenges that you face.
Yeah, our climate is definitely a challenge. It's not the easiest thing to keep bees
Mhm,
alive here, just because the winter is so long. Like it starts in the fall, and then it can get warm, and then it can get cold, and then it can be dry, and then it could be wet. So it's the weather's all over the place.
mhm,
Bees like it to be like a constant. Like it
mm,
would be nice if we had lots of snow and low humidity and cold temperatures. People think that it's the cold that killed the bees, but it's not. So what happens is the bees create heat with their wing muscles. So they vibrate their
mhm,
wing muscles, but they unhinge their wings from the wing muscles, and that way they don't blow the heat away because they need to keep the queen at 91 degrees Fahrenheit
oh, wow.
all winter. And so this can create condensation sometimes. So if you don't have your hive tilted forward enough, or if there's not enough ventilation, then the bees get wet. And if the bees get wet in the winter, they're dead bees because they just don't have the energy to dry themselves off. And so that's what kills our bees in the winter mostly. Wet bees or starvation. It's not the cold, it's never the cold.
Mm,
So we like to have snow packed around them for added insulation as well. And if it was a constant, below zero all winter would be nice.
mm,
But here lately, it's been fluctuating and it's been causing, bit of havoc on my bees. Some of them are getting sick with dysentery and then other issues and stuff. So, yeah, it's a lot of challenges to keep bees here in Newfoundland, especially
yeah,
because our
yep, yep,
season's just so short, right? And you
yep,
have to spend y- every day is important. And if during the summer, if you're getting a lot of rain, and the bees can't be out foraging, so they're
mhm,
missing days on
mhm,
their foraging, so they don't get enough honey packed away for their long winter ahead. So then you have to substitute with sugar syrup and stuff. And so yes, the bees have to have at least 100 pounds of honey in order to be able to sleep well during the winter. So I can sleep
right.
well during the winter knowing that they have enough food in there.
Wow, wow. Yeah, the weather in Newfoundland is definitely something that if you're not from there, you have no idea how up and
Yeah.
down it can. Yep, yep. How do you approach sustainable beekeeping practices to ensure the health and well-being of your bees and the environment? How do you approach it?
Yep. So like I was saying earlier, I spread them out so they're not concentrated in one
Mhm,
area. That makes sure that the bees are not stressed fighting for forage.
mhm,
So if they're all in the one area, then they'll all be competing for every bit of flower and forage within the 3 5 kilometer radius of their hives. So spreading them out in different communities, they're not. they're not putting a big strain on competing for food, and then you can ensure everybody has enough time and enough forage to get into the winter.
Mhm.
Um, what else was it? What, sorry, what was the question again?
So yeah, so how do you, approach the sustainability? So you do, like, you're the
Yeah,
different the distance, all of that, that's, like I just
yeah,
thought people had
and
hives. Yeah,
they
and
put
that
them
was
in the
it,
backyard, and that was it.
and
Yeah,
that's it.
it's a fair
Yeah.
bit of work to it. So we have to make sure I check every hive at least every 7 to 10 days, um,
Mhm,
to make sure everything is the way it should be inside the hive. That's how you pick up on things that might be going wrong.
mhm,
Because if you leave your inspections too long in between, and something could happen the day after you did your inspection, and if you don't go back in there for 21 days or whatever, you could find a dead hive, you could find a hive that had swarmed, you could find a hive bursting ready to swarm. And so it's very crucial that you keep up on your inspections. And then also, if the bees are sick or anything, you'll pick up on it soon enough that you'll be able to mitigate anything that would go awry. Also make sure, and before, like, going into the winter, once there's no more flowers around, but the weather is still nice,
mhm,
I feed sugar syrup to ensure that they're not burning through anything that they have packed in for the winter. So I always make sure they have ample food. I like to treat for nosema going into the winter and coming out of the winter, and nosema and dysentery. It's diarrhea.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
the bees can
Hmm,
get bad guts during the winter and stuff. Um,
okay,
so yeah, just managing everything and making sure it's all in line and the way it should look, and keeping up on your inspections is how you do that.
okay. So can you discuss the significance of honey production in Newfoundland and any distinct characteristics of local honey? So, Newfoundland is a
Yeah.
island, has its own
Yeah.
things, so how is it
We're,
different?
we are one of the only places left in the world that does not have the varroa mite, which is the varroa destructor. Um, you've heard a couple of years ago about hives collapsing. So
Mhm.
it's the things that cause the honeybee hives to collapse is the varroa destructor, which is a little mite. You could picture it as, say, if you had a mite the size of a dinner plate stuck to you and feeding off of your fat and just pretty much sucking the life out of you is what the varroa mite does.
Wow.
And so we're one of the only places left in the world that does not have the varroa mite. We also
Mhm.
do not have the small hive beetle. Uh, we do not have the tracheal mite, and we don't have wax moth. So those are four main contributors to the collapse of honeybee colonies, and we
Okay.
don't have those. So which is gives us the upper hand to, or in my opinion, we have some of the cleanest honey in the world because we don't have to treat for any of those pests. So there's no chemicals being pumped into our hives to kill the varroa mite. Like everywhere else in the world, you have to treat with oxalic acid, and
Mhm.
so you have to suit up and put on, a big full respirator mask, and treat your hives twice a year. And so we don't have to do that. So none of our honey is contaminated with any of those particles. Even though
Okay.
when they do treat in the mainland, when they do treat for varroa, the honey is usually off, but the particles are still in the hive. The bees are still in the hive. They're still walking around with it on them. So it's definitely trace amounts that get passed along throughout the hive, no matter when you're taking the honey or not. And so
Mhm.
Newfoundland's honey, with it being so clean, uh, there's a real big market for it. So I was talking to my another beekeeper in Alberta, and I forget now. I believe it was he was getting $3 or $4 a pound for his honey, whereas I'm getting $20 a pound.
Wow. Wow. That's
So
awesome.
that's
And is that
it's special, right? So
yeah.
it's a superfood,
Mhm.
and people
Yep.
are really loving it now. So it's really taken off here.
That's good. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yep. I tell patients, you know, sugar is looked at as a bad thing in terms of like how
Yeah,
much sugar we should consume daily. But when it comes to honey, like I tell patients, honey has so many other different benefits.
yeah,
You shouldn't, it is a sugar, but for
but
immunity, all of the great things it has to offer is like on a
yeah.
different level. So I'm
And
a big, yeah, I'm a big believer in
I
honey.
also hear that they're using honey now to treat diabetes,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
manage it. Sorry, not treat it.
Well, it's a sugar, so, like, the fake sugars and stuff, we're just
Yep,
kinda on the cusp of what that's doing to, people,
a-
but real
absolutely.
honey is different. It's totally
Yeah,
different. Your body can process it.
it's fructose and glucose. That's
Mhm.
the two main sugars that it compiles of. So,
Yep, yep. Alright, so, what are some of the misconceptions about bees and beekeeping that you see when okay, so, like, you have this beautiful farm. When you go do your pop-ups, like what are some of the things people um what they don't understand? The process, how long it
um,
takes.
yeah, they don't really understand how much work goes into getting
Mhm.
the honey from the hive to the jar. Uh,
Right.
uh, Farming or beekeeping and farming in general is just like gambling. Nothing's guaranteed.
Right.
We could
Yep.
have a drought all summer, and I won't get any honey, and I'd have to feed them sugar syrup, and no honey, no money. So
Yep.
nothing's guaranteed when it comes to it, and just the overall work that goes into keeping a colony alive, and not only alive but making sure it thrives. Because if it's
Mhm.
not thriving, it won't produce any honey, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so some years when I first started, uh, it takes about 2 years before you get honey.
Mhm.
Because in your first
Yep.
year, you can't take anything from them because
Mhm.
it's early and they need everything to get through their first winter because our season is so short, and it takes a good bit to get a colony built up from a starter pack to
Mhm.
a full colony to survive winter. And uh, and then so yeah, the first year you don't get anything until the second year when that colony is matured, um, and then you can get honey. But also, if you don't have, if the floral source isn't there in that area, then you won't
Mhm.
get honey anyway because there's nothing for
Right.
them to feed off of. And I've had that happen as well. I've In one area I put it and put two hives there, and it came back 2 weeks later, and they were nearly dead,
Mm.
starved, like absolutely starved.
Mm.
And and then I put my buddy's drone up in the air, which is what I should have done beforehand, and just canvassed the area, and it was pretty much just mostly woods. So
Mhm.
boreal forest doesn't carry a whole lot of flower, right? So
Right. Right.
yeah, it's
Okay.
a lot of playing around with it,
Mhm.
trying to find an area that's a good producer, and then trying to make sure the bees don't swarm, because if the bees swarm, they take all the honey with them and leave, and then you're left with pretty much a beginner colony again, because the mated queen left with 60% of the colony and as much honey as they could take, and they leave you behind with 40% of the colony and a virgin queen. So then it takes, 2, 3 weeks for the virgin queen to reach sexual maturity, and then it takes maybe another 2 weeks or so for her to leave the hive to go out and get mated. And then so, 4 or 5 weeks, the whole colony is just getting smaller and smaller because there's no queen laying eggs, and then so it's pretty much starting over from fresh again, right when they swarm. So swarm management is key, trying to
Mhm.
mitigate swarms in the early part of the season, end of May, all of June, and the beginning of July. Uh, if they swarm on you, it's not the end of the world, but you're out with your honey, and so there's a lot of playing around with it.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned earlier dysentery. You mentioned that being a condition that bees
Yeah.
can get. So, like, is it something that you treat? Is that like is it, do you have to reach out to a
Yeah,
vet, or are you all schooled up on knowing how to treat different things?
yeah. So I know how to treat for dysentery and nosema. There's this drug called fumagillin, and
Mhm.
they're the big, I guess you would say, beekeeping stores
Mhm.
in the mainland, like New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. They carry it,
Okay.
so you just
Mhm.
reach out to them and get them to send it to you. And so what you do is you just put a couple drops. It's just a liquid. And you just put a couple
Mhm.
drops in their sugar syrup when you're feeding it to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. That's wild. Um, so I know you do have initiatives. I know there's things going on, projects that you kind of are undertaking to promote bee conservation and education in the community. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the whole premise of, I guess, our homestead, because we have a homestead and then I have a plot of land as a farm that I'm trying to create or turn into a farm. So here on the homestead is just the house and 1 acre, and we're trying to turn it into an educational center for
Mhm.
agriculture.
Yep.
And so the hope is to have the schools in the area use it as for field trips to bring their students to come and learn where their food comes from, what it takes to grow food, and all that stuff, and try and reconnect uh, the youth with our food system and what it takes to do it. And it just doesn't appear on the shelf.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people that our youth just don't, they just don't know.
They don't know. Nope. Mm-mm.
No, no. I did a presentation at a school one day, and I had some fruits and vegetables with me, and I was just showing them what was and what this was and what that was, and I
Mhm.
said, and this is a tomato, and one kid said, "That's a tomato." I didn't know that was a tomato. I guess, and
Mhm.
I couldn't
Yep.
really grasp it,
Mhm.
because I
Yep.
I grew up, homesteading. It was a way of life from a kid when I was a kid, right? So
Yep. Yep.
uh, yeah, it kind of struck me odd, but it wasn't the only instance. So it's just like,
Mhm.
it wasn't a one-off thing. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
it's
Right.
it's it's real. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, we have scouts groups and stuff come, and we do little tours with them, and just have them look at the beehives, and educate them on what bees do. Also the pigs and the chickens, and we also have fruit trees and vegetable gardens here. And our next, I guess you would say, project. Well, we got a couple projects coming up actually. We're putting an in-ground greenhouse,
Mhm.
using a GAT system, so it's ground to air thermal heat.
Oh,
So it
wow.
uses the energy and the heat from the earth to give me the ability to grow 365 days a year. So I can
Yep.
grow leafy greens and stuff like that through
Mhm.
winter and stuff. And hopefully that's done through a program with the Food Producers Forum, and they provided me with $10,000, and I had someone else, a private business, back me with the other 10,000.
Mhm.
So that's
Yep.
going to be a go ahead for next month. We're going to start the groundwork on that, and that'll also be a part of the educational system here. And yeah, and not only that, we'll be able to grow leafy greens 365 days a year, but also provide it
Mhm.
to the community at a low cost.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
because it's
Yep.
only going to, my business model is not a business model. Um, I I am a people before profit organization.
Yep,
Uh,
yep, yep,
I'm not here to make a profit. My profit is living my lifestyle.
yep,
As long as
yep,
everything at the end of the day is covered and I don't have to pour,
yep,
my personal money into it, then that's fine enough
yep,
for me.
yep,
I'm not here to gouge people or anything like that. My
yep.
goal is to feed people, and not only feed them, but provide them with a nutritional source
Mhm,
and high density of nutrition. Um, and so I think that will build a sense of community around that. Um,
mhm,
And also another project that we have in the works, I just became a part of the Port Blanford Horticultural Society,
mhm.
and we're putting in um, let me see what it is. It's an edible botanical garden,
Okay. Edible
and it's
flowers.
going to
Yeah.
be, yep, the flowers, but not only flowers. We have 150 fruit trees going in.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
the groundwork has already started on that. Uh, so the 150 fruit trees will be in a three-quarter of an acre plot. And
Mhm.
to give you, I guess, a vision of it, it's a walking trail within and without, a gazebo in the center, and
Mhm.
there's a rock garden, and there'll be a dogberry tree garden. So it will mostly natives. It'd be a native garden, and yeah, and it'd
Nice.
be a bunch of plots here and there with walking trails around, and that'll be available for anybody to take advantage of.
Nice. Nice. That's you know, I'm not dating myself, but going back to your story about the tomatoes, so my mom grew vegetables. I was very
Yeah,
fortunate, to grow up with we had our own cows, we had a pig, we had chickens,
likewise.
so
Yeah.
had my own butter, grew up that way, and it was interesting because we only had lettuce in the summer and we only had tomatoes where I'm from. So my
Right.
mom was a big, if we don't grow it, we don't eat it. Tons of
Mm-hmm.
potatoes, tons of carrots, turnips, cabbage. We had our own root cellar. So, like, everything was kept. And that's all we had. Like, I mean, I'm not too old,
Yep.
but for me, pizza was a rare thing, fast food was a rare thing, and I think we need
Yep.
to get back to that sort of, um, mindset of, we can produce our own things in Newfoundland despite
Yep.
the weather. We need
Yep.
to find a way because we live on an island and, I'm in Alaska right now and we have the same issues of, a very
Right.
short growing season. Um, you can grow stuff, but how do you make it through the winter? That's the
Right. Yep.
challenge, right?
Yep.
Um, and plus, everybody gets a moose, everybody gets the fish. But certainly fruit, honey, these are things that honey
They're,
is
they're
such an
scarce.
amazing thing to produce.
Yeah.
And when I buy honey, it's usually really expensive and I just know the benefits of it, so I don't really care. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna come visit you when I come home.
Absolutely.
I'll bring you some salmon, some Alaska salmon, I'll bring you some treats.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm super interested in what you do there. I
So
think it's, like,
I
next
give up.
level.
I give up eating salmon. I haven't had salmon in years because I won't eat farm salmon,
Well,
and
mine is
that's
real.
all we can get here. And
Yeah,
I
no,
would
this is real
lose my
stuff.
mind.
This is, like, yeah, some
Yeah,
of the best in the world, and when
yeah,
I come home, I usually bring home, like, 2 to 3 coolers full, and I trade for codfish because I love
yeah.
codfish.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. Awesome.
Sounds good.
Well, I think what you do is absolutely incredible. When I found you on, Instagram, I'm like, "I gotta figure out how to reach this guy," and, I think what you do should be shared. You
No,
would
thank you.
if you just did a little bit of YouTube, like, seriously, you would, like I told you, blow it up because there's not many yous out there. Like,
No,
plus you're
yeah,
from Newfoundland, which
that's
makes it
true.
even more awesome. Right? Awesome. Well, I wanna thank you so much, Ian, for sharing your story and sharing your time today. If you wanna learn more about the bearded beekeeper, I will have all of his social media links, plus how to get in touch with him below. If you're in Newfoundland this summer and you're around the Port Blanford area, go visit, pick up some honey, follow his Instagram because I know like all the pop ups and stuff you share there, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Any other words you want to share or anything else? Or is it time to go watch some hockey?
It's getting close to hockey time, but I would like to say to tell everybody to at least grow one thing this summer. You know, you
Hmm.
don't need a
Hmm.
whole lot of space to
Hmm.
grow one thing.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Leafy greens are some of the easiest stuff to grow,
Hmm. Yep.
and they don't take much effort, and they don't need much. They don't need much work or anything. So yeah, give it a go. You don't need much room. Just even if you had a little small windowsill or a patio or
Mhm.
anything at all, let me know how it goes.
Right on. Thanks again, Ian. Appreciate your
Awesome.
time.
Thank you, dearly.